It's the Mustang Insider Show presented by Cal Portland, the largest building materials company of cement and construction material products on the West Coast. Now, here's Chris Sylvester, the voice of the Mustangs.
You're locked into the Mustang Insider, where we talk everything Cal Poly athletics as we embark on a new season. The fall sports beginning their preseason camp. Some of them have even started some preseason exhibitions. Cal Poly women's soccer, a 2-0 win over Westmont on the new turf at Spanos Stadium last night. And Alex Crozier, the women's soccer head coach at Cal Poly, embarking on his 30th season at the helm of the program, joins us now on the Mustang Insider. Coach, thanks so much for taking some time. I know things are getting busy here as you guys close in on the start of the regular season, but wow, year 30. Does it feel like you've been here for almost 3 decades now?
I feel old. No, it doesn't actually, because one thing I've learned is everything's kind of cyclical, and the last 3 or 4 years we've been building on something pretty special. So we still haven't come close to what I would like to accomplish here, but 30 years goes by quicker than you think. But it's been enjoyable.
Hey, well, how was the off season for you? I know the season wrapped up late in 2021, and obviously a lot of conditioning, a lot of team practices, a lot of team bonding throughout a college sports off season. But you have that new turf put in at Spanos, always looking at other upgrades in the athletic department here at Cal Poly. What was the off season? What was the focus of the off season for your program, and how did that kind of translate into these days, these preseason days leading up to the regular season?
Well, I think there's a couple of things. We had more soccer in this last fall. We lost the conference tournament game with a fairly young team. Basically, almost everyone was returning, and it just kind of left a bitter pill in their mouth. So the off season, the winter 8-hour weeks, and then the spring the 20-hour weeks, were basically spent just let's get better. We were still on an upswing. Every week we're getting a little better. And that's been the focus. And we have I didn't really realize until last night when they were announcing the lineup, but we have a very senior laden starting roster right now. So it's a group that's been around for a while, been working, building the program back up, and they're hungry. So it's really been about just let's get better. And I think we're starting off in a lot better spot than we did a year ago at this time.
Yeah, it certainly feels like this group has some unfinished business. We're going to get into that. But you guys, I mentioned, already have the exhibitions underway. A 2-0 defeat of Westmont at Spanos Stadium last night. You got one more dress rehearsal on the road at San Jose State this weekend before you open the regular season at St. Mary's. You mentioned how much you have coming back. Last year, a 13-8 record. You went 8-2 in the Big West. You were a save and a goal away, if you will, from reaching the NCAA postseason. What was the vibe around this group throughout the offseason, and how much confidence do they have knowing how close they got to the postseason last year?
Well, I think there's a couple of things. We had a good season, but I don't think anyone was really satisfied with it. So it was one of those off seasons, I guess you could say, where everything was competitive. We played some games in the spring, played some good teams. We played Santa Clara, that was, finished second, third in the country. Pepperdine was a top 20 team, and we played well against those teams. And with, again, there were still some COVID issues in the spring. Players had to sit out and miss things. But I think the group is realizing that, hey, we're better than we think we are. But not to the point where they're overconfident. And so I think we're in a good spot, kind of a sweet spot right now.
Yeah, it's kind of incredible with the performance of last year's team. And I know you guys were far from satisfied with the end result. But when you really think about how much patience they had to kind of master, right? Because you didn't play any games in the 2020 calendar year against anybody else. And you had to sit around for much of 2021 until August, where you were finally able to see some other players on the other side of the pitch. So a group that I'd imagine bonded a lot in between the end of that 2019 season and beginning of 2021. And you kind of saw how the chemistry was built amongst that group last year, and how much more you'd imagine they'll be close on the field as we embark on 2022. We're chatting with Alex Crozier, Cal Poly women's soccer coach. He's getting ready for his 30th season at the helm of the program. Here's a first for you. I alluded to it a little bit earlier, but how about the turf now at Spanos Stadium? That probably changes your home field advantage a bit. What are your thoughts on that? How long were those talks in the works, and how much do you think it's going to help as the season rolls along?
Well, part of the last question that remains to be seen. But we did, we got on it for the first time about a week ago, and basically we all decided, okay, we're undefeated on this turf, so let's keep it that way. So we wanted to meet back. Our goal is to meet back at the end of the season on that turf and be in the same position. So I think, the playing surface is great. We're still getting used to it, and we'll see how that takes us through the season.
Well, your home opener, which will be the first, rather second game of the regular season, the regular season opener up in Moraga at St. Mary's on August 18th. But just a few days later, you open the home schedule at Spanos. It's getting breakfast with the Mustangs. It's a 10:30 start against Iowa. The Hawkeyes are in town. If you can't make it out to Spanos, which we encourage you to, because it's a really good women's soccer team that Coach Crozier and the Mustangs have put together in 2022, and a good competition on the other side, at least in the early season, in an Iowa team coming halfway across the country to do it. That'll be live on ESPN Plus, but you have that early 10:30 touch time against the Hawkeyes. And you look at this non-conference schedule that you put together, Coach, and you mentioned how you felt like maybe playing some of those top-ranked teams early on last season helped your team once you got into the Big West. I'm looking at it at St. Mary's, home against Iowa. You go to Minnesota, so you get a Big Ten team at home, you get a Big Ten team on the road, and then you're at Sac State, you're at Stanford, a really good program, you're at Gonzaga, Washington State, as you go to the Pacific Northwest for a second straight year. How did this non-conference schedule come together, and how are you hoping that your team can maybe pick up some resume wins if for whatever reason you don't come out on top in the Big West Conference tournament?
Well, I think a couple things. All those teams that you mentioned, the Pac-12 teams, Big Ten 12 teams, those are good RPI games. Win or lose, because it's based on your record, your opponent's record, and opponent's record. So we can get a couple wins out of those. That really bodes well for us as far as RPI end of the season. And we're going to be battle tested because we're playing a little bit of everything. But I think Washington State and Stanford are both preseason top 20 teams, maybe even top 10. So we're definitely going to see where we're at heading into conference. So it'll be good. Hopefully there'll be confidence builders, and but we're gonna compete in every game. So we'll see where we're at.
You have about a month of non-conference action before the Big West opener. That'll be home against rival UC Santa Barbara on September 15th. How much do you feel like you're going to learn about your team between now and the end of that non-conference schedule, right before that Big West opening game against UC Santa Barbara?
Well, I think we're going to face a lot of different styles of play. The Big Ten, there's a lot of, front to back, physical, everything in the air, those kinds of things. So we're going to have to deal with that and still play the way we want to play. Playing against Stanford, which is just, one of the best teams in the country. See if we can deal with that. So there's a little bit of everything. And when you get into the Big West, it's just a dogfight. There's really no gimmies. Every game's a battle, and it's a pretty tough conference. So hopefully we'll be battle tested, be a little grittier, and we'll be able to come away, get the goals when we need them, and keep the goals out when we need that, and have a good season.
Now, in your 30 years, you've inherited a bunch of different situations. You've had teams where you've had almost nobody from the year prior coming back. You've had teams like this where you have the bulk of the key players coming back from a season ago. And obviously a lot of seasons where you're kind of at a mix of some pieces coming back, some key losses. It's always going to be key losses in college sports, but it feels like with your all-conference goalkeeper back, Camille Lefay, Nikki Trucco, a couple of names that really became household names around Cal Poly and in Big West women's soccer last year. So was it kind of easier in regards to implementing your system and certain game plans with a group that's already kind of familiar with how you like to operate and how you like to do things?
Well, on paper it is, but there's always the human element, and the game of soccer is really it's a player's game. So it's not like we can dictate that during the course of the game. But having said that, the players that have returned, near as I can tell right now, they've done a great job of preparing themselves for the season. So we have a good group of returners. We have a good group of newbies, and in between there, we have some players that maybe didn't play much last year that have also gotten better. So it's competitive in every spot, and I think with our internal leadership, if we can manage the locker room, so to speak, then we're going to be in really great shape.
That really does seem like a great group. Talked to a lot of them last year down the stretch, and a lot of good vibes going into this 2022 season. So we've obviously touched on how much you have coming back and the luxury of having some familiarity with your coaching style and your program, the way you run it. But it was a cool story of perseverance that I saw on GoPoly.com last week. A couple of newcomers, Kerry Wasaka, Annie Larson. They had planned to be on the team last year. You just didn't have enough spots for them, but you told them to keep working if they wanted to be a part of this program in 2022 moving forward. They are on your roster. They will have a chance to make an impact. If you could kind of fill everybody in on that story of those two and how they're on your roster now and ready to be a part of your 2022 journey.
Sure. Well, last year's roster was heavily affected by the COVID. Um, and, a lot of players that would have graduated normally wanted to have their senior season. So they hang on to a class or two they can take in the fall so they can be part of that season. So our roster we started out with a roster of 44. And so knowing that going in, every year there are a handful of athletes that get into Cal Poly on their own and want to be on the team, but we just don't have room for them. And that's especially the case this year. So the message to them was with Annie, it was like, well, look, if you decide to come here, she had other places she could have gone. We'll put you on the roster in the winter. And with Carrie, it was, well, come on out in the winter and we'll basically use winter quarter or 8-hour weeks as a tryout. And they both came in and, did extremely well. Our first litmus test is, do you help practice or do you deter from practice? And so practice was still good as they were competing, and we kept them on, got in some spring games, and it just made sense. So they've earned their spot. Now the battle's just beginning, the journey. They got to figure out a way to get on the field. So they're both really hardworking athletes, good culture kids, positive, good teammates. And so all those things that are important outside of just what they do on the field. And, the world's their oyster. So they have a chance to earn a spot.
Alex Crozier joining us on the Mustang Insider. Coach, for the fans that are going to be at Spanos once again and check out that new turf this season, what has you the most excited about this group in 2022?
Well, I think, we had a good year last year, and I think we realized that, hey, we can do really good things. And it's like I tell them, they are capable of much more than they believe of themselves. So they're starting to see that. They're believing in themselves, and for me, I think we're going to shock a lot of people, and I'm looking forward to seeing if we can do that.
Certainly hope so. A lot of opportunities on that non-conference schedule before the Big West season starts, as we mentioned, and it's going to be a fun Big West season as well. As you called it, a dogfight, and the Big West season starts September 15th. The regular season, it'll start up in Moraga. Not that far of a drive for diehard Mustang fans to give Cal Poly a little support on August 18th as the Mustangs embark on this journey. Year 30 for you, Coach. Thanks so much for your time. Good luck with your exhibition this weekend in San Jose, and we'll be pulling for your Mustangs all year long.
All right. Thanks for having me.
All right. A special thanks to Alex Crozier jumping on Mustang Insider. As always, we encourage you To stay updated on our future podcasts and editions of Mustang Insider by following CP Athletics, CP Mustangs on Twitter and Instagram for all the latest on Cal Poly Athletics. Again, that women's soccer, the first home game, 10:30 a.m. Set your alarms. Iowa, the Hawkeyes in town on Sunday, August 21st. Next week, we will catch up with Caroline Walters, Cal Poly women's volleyball head coach, as we preview their 2022 season on the Mustang Insider. All right, as always here on the Mustang Insider, what helps us keep pumping out the Cal Poly content to you, the fans, is our sponsors. We'd like to thank Dignity Health, offering all-star treatment you could trust. Learn more about their healthcare services. Visit dignityhealth.org/Central Coast. And Grocery Outlet, sizzling fajitas, hearty beef sliders, bite-sized mini taco cups, and a mouth-watering Southwest chicken bowl. Mustang fans, you won't want to miss these dishes in the Grocery Outlet Mustang Tailgater Recipe Book. Get all your fresh ingredients at Grocery Outlet San Luis Obispo store on Madonna, and feast on these yummy tailgating favorites before a game or at home. So many options to enjoy it. Download the Mustang Tailgater booklet today on gopoly.com/publications. Before the football season gets started, I can guarantee you'll want to download that.
This has been the Mustang Insider Show presented by Cal Portland, with a commitment to environmental leadership that has made the organization stronger and is the primary choice of contractors. The Mustang Insider Show. The preceding has been a Learfield's presentation on the Cal Poly Sports Network.